Hey everybody, welcome back to Renaissance Man Media. Uh, Today I'm going to be doing in my next series of Bond movies. The next one I got up is The Living Daylights. Now I did not just rewatch this. I had seen this movie for the first time about 3 weeks ago, and kind of shows you how I feel about it. I really didn't want to rewatch it again, so I just kind of looked at some reviews, kind of did like a quick trim of the movie because I really didn't want to watch the movie again. Not that I hate the movie, but Living Daylights does not rank highly for me, but we'll get into it. So anyway, Roger Moore is now gone. Timothy Dalton is the new Bond in this Living Daylights movie. The Bond girl is Cara Milovi. The actress's name, Mariam Dabo, I think is how you say her name. I liked her in the sense of she felt like a believable person to me, and this, like, she was a cello player. She was kind of innocent, caught up in all this. She's not some super secret agent. That being said, I've heard some criticism about her performance, that basically she was just really naive, and not her performance, basically the writing of the character. And I agree with that. It does go a long way, and it gets a little old. We got the bad guys. You got Brad Whitaker, played by Joe Don Baker, who is the guy that ends up playing CIA agent Jack Wade. I like him a lot better as Jack Wade than I do the villain. I don't really think he works as a villain. Plus, he doesn't get a whole lot of screen time in this. And another thing, the climax of the movie, he's like shooting his futuristic gun that's got like a little shield, and it's like, James Bond's a 00 agent. Like, he couldn't just, because basically the shield only covers like this. You could just hit him in the chest, hit him in the, the groin area, whatever you wanted to do, and they'd be dead. So that didn't make a lot of sense. Necros is about, I didn't get into Koskov, played by Jerion Crab, I think is the guy's name. He's the bad guy from The Fugitive. He's in a few other movies, but Necros, he's in Die Hard and Mission Impossible. So he's the tall blonde guy. He basically just plays a good foreign tall blonde villain. So the plot of this movie, the movie starts, the opening sequence, there's like a 00 training scene, and basically one of the 00 agents actually gets picked off by someone you think might be a 00 agent, and they're really not. And then they drop like a balloon or drop a little card that says like some Russian phrase on it, which is supposed to mean death to all spies. As the audience member, you don't know what that means. And I don't think they do a great job of explaining it means death to all spies. I think you have to like look that up. So yeah, there's that. And then basically James deals with that guy, and then he lands on a little yacht, and some girl's like, oh, it's boring out here, and there's no men that I like, they're all boring. And then he shows up, and Timothy Dalton doesn't really play a good womanizer, which is part of the character. He doesn't, to me, he would only pick up women just for the fact of like, looks good in a suit, all that kind of stuff. But I don't feel like Timothy could like legitimately charm a woman that maybe doesn't like him at first, which the character has to do a lot of times. So in that part, I don't think he fits James Bond. He fits James Bond in a lot of other areas, but so moving on, then you get the opening, or the song sequence, The Living Daylights. This is a song that's kind of grown on me. I like it. I don't love it, but I like it. It's suitable. I think it's Duran Duran, or maybe I'm wrong. No, it's Aha or something like that is the name of the band or the group. Because I think Duran Duran does A View to a Kill. Anyway, moving on after that, they get to the meeting where they're talking about, the KGB general, or the Soviet Union general, Koskov. He's trying to defect. Or maybe they do say he's a member of the KGB. I don't remember, but he's trying to defect, and his girlfriend, which you don't know at the time, Kara, she's the celloist, and anyway, they're watching a performance, and then she ends up having a sniper rifle. All that stuff is good. The whole defection of how they get him across the border, they slip him through like a tube, I think is meant to be for oil, but I might be wrong. That's all good stuff, and then he flies off on a plane. Then the next scene, basically they get in and they're doing like a debrief where they bring him to British, some sort of like off the reservation headquarters where they're all like at a mansion. Not even that nice. It's got a lot of land, but there's some protection. Anyway, the guy Necros, he comes in as you think he's KGB, but he ends up not being KGB. But he takes out the milkman, takes over his truck, wearing the right stuff, and then he starts like one by one infiltrating, knocking out like a chef or a waiter or something like that. And Koskov in this scene is basically describing that Pushkin, General Pushkin, which is played by John Rhys Davis, who I love as an actor, and it's nice to see him in this. At first, I thought he was the villain, not having seen The Living Daylights before. It's nice to know that he's not actually the villain. Anyway, so they get in that scene and Bond leaves. Like they do a little talk and then he leaves. He's out, and then this Necros guy goes in and like is wiping everybody out. Really smart plans, throwing like milk bottles that are actually grenades. That's cool. So that whole sequence I love. And that's probably my favorite sequence in the film. And anyway, they end up getting Koskov. They end up taking him back on a helicopter, acting like they're a medical team. They take him out, and then they've trapped him, or they've stolen him. So the MI6, they kind of look like a bunch of idiots. The British intelligence agency. They even say that, I think, in the movie, that, you know, like, we're the laughing stock of the intelligence community. But yeah, so they leave that, and then James is trying to uncover, you know, he goes and visits Q, and they go, hey, like, how don't you check out that celloist and see if, like, you can actually get some info on her? He's like, okay. And he ends up tracking her down to her apartment, and then he has a quick conversation, and then basically they're off on their journey. Their first goal is to leave the Soviet Union, Russia or whatever. Their goal was to leave the Soviet Union. They get out, and then they make it to Austria, I believe is where they go. They cross the border. And then they got like a carnival sequence that's as good. He takes the girl shopping, which is nice. And anyway, eventually you learn more and more that, like, James is starting to piece together that this is probably not the KGB's doing, and that this is actually a third party, which it's Brad Whitaker and Koskov, them as villains, because I don't really want to go through the whole plot. You can watch other videos where they go over the whole plot. Whitaker doesn't work as a bad guy to me. Like I said, he's only in like 3 scenes. Koskov, he's a little too silly. I like him in The Fugitive as a villain because he really plays a guy that you could think could be nice, but he's actually like sinister. In this, I don't really buy that his plan would work, because eventually you're relying on too many people to buy your bullcrap, and eventually something's going to happen. So he wouldn't be able to do business after this, like, with anybody, KGB or like Soviet Union or America or Great Britain. He would be screwed, and obviously that intel would be passed on to America, and I feel like he'd run out of friends pretty quick. Yeah, and then like the finale of this movie takes place in Afghanistan, which I really didn't care for that setting. I'm not saying that you can't make a good action movie there or whatever, but that's when the movie to me really slows down. The first half, where it's some espionage stuff, that's interesting, but then once they leave the Soviet Union and go into Austria, it starts slowing down a little bit, but I'm still in for it. And then once, like, they have to fake Pushkin's death, James and him have an interrogation conversation where he's basically got him on his knees. He's like, I'm going to have to kill you, and then really doesn't. But that was a good scene. The rest after that, I just feel like it just goes downhill. The guy that plays Cameron Shaw, I think is how they say his name, I liked him as an actor. I thought he was good, posing as like just a regular, you know, like I'm just a local Afghani, but he was actually, I think he went to school in Oxford or something like that. So he's a well-educated man, and like he's the leader of their militia. I liked him, but the scenes in Afghanistan, like I said, they really slowed down. Him having to go back to the Afghan base, which I'd be curious where that's actually filmed. I'm curious if that's Bagram or not, because I know I was in Bagram, and Bagram is a former Soviet Union base that we eventually took over that now we've given back, which I hate that. But anyway, as far as how I feel about the movie, I don't hate it. It's for me one of the most forgettable James Bond movies, just because when it does lag, it's really bad. And Timothy Dalton, he doesn't have the charisma that I think James Bond needs to have, where you're like, I'll watch this guy do anything. Like, he doesn't really have that. So the scenes where there's not a whole lot popping off, it really suffers. And the end of the movie, where like they got diamonds and opium and all this other stuff, it is hard for me. It was hard to keep track of what's the bad guy's angle here. What are they going after? Because I thought Whitaker's trying to sell guns, but then they all of a sudden have diamonds, and then, okay, they're selling the diamonds to the local Afghanis for the opium, which I guess they're saying they're going to make more off of. But I just had a hard time understanding how all this connected. Another thing at the end with the C-130, which that's the plane I used to work on, all of a sudden they just start running out of fuel and the engines just stop. That wouldn't happen. I know this is nerdy stuff, but basically there's a whole manifold of fuel that goes across like the top wings of the plane. So you wouldn't just shoot the side of it and be like, oh, I guess it's out of fuel. I guess we're done. Like, that was some made up crap. And even if you were running out of fuel, your engines, you could shut one off, switch it over to one, and you can actually fly a C-130 with just one engine. I know this is nerdy stuff that no one else cares about, but that kind of took me out of it. Because like when they dropped the bomb on that bridge to like, hey, the Afghans are free, like the Soviet Union's screwed, and then all of a sudden their plane's like, oh, we're running out, we got to ditch. That to me just felt like tacked on, where they're like, oh, we need even more action. And I didn't really care for that because I didn't think that was even necessary. Because realistically, if we're trying to do this more real, which when Timothy Dalton, I feel like that's what they were going for, you didn't need to do that. I didn't feel like. I think that just shows that your action sequences weren't all that interesting to begin with. So yeah, that's. Oh, I mean, I need to talk about a few other characters. They had a new Moneypenny in this. I could look up the actress's name. I think she's right here. Carolyn Bliss played the new Miss Moneypenny. I actually thought she was really pretty, and if you are gonna recast Moneypenny to be younger, along with a younger James Bond, I actually thought she was a good choice. I'm a little bummed they didn't keep her. Like, I like her look as a Moneypenny better, but I will say that once they get into Goldeneye, that other girl, I forgot what I think her last name is Bond, Samantha Bond, I want to say. She's really good. Like, I think her acting is better than this girl, but I like the look of the other girl more. And I think it kind of makes more sense that if a young girl was going in to be like the new secretary, it would kind of make sense that she would be overly infatuated with this special secret agent named James Bond. Overall, like I said, the plot of this movie, this is a watchable James Bond movie. It's just not one of my favorites, and it's one that I will definitely skip. My License to Kill review, because that's one I saw like back to back after this one, and then I decided I want to do a James Bond ranking, or a James Bond, like a sequence where I just marathon. For me, License to Kill is a lot better. The bad guys, because that's the thing, you have two main bad guys in this movie, and it kind of feels like you have none because they're not really strong. License to Kill, Sanchez, he's a very strong bad guy, and I think that the plot's a lot easier to follow in License to Kill, which helps. And I'm not saying you can't ever try a complex plot, but for this movie, I just feel like you eventually are just running out where you're like, I just don't care anymore. The film is not crisp. I don't think it looks all that amazing. And I granted this is the 80s, I get all that, but I just don't think we don't get the beautiful scenery, I feel like, that we've got in other movies. Like the movie I just watched before this, well, Casino Royale, and then before that was Moonraker. Beautiful scenery in both movies. Here, I don't really feel like we get a whole lot of that. So, yeah, I don't know. This one would rank pretty low for me, and not entirely sure where yet. Like I said, I'll get to the rankings. As far as my just rating for this movie as a whole, what I would give it, this is probably a $5 bin for me. Like if you saw this in a $5 bin at Walmart, you'd be like, oh, a 007 movie. Okay, yeah, I'll give that a shot. But that's about it. I couldn't call this a guilty pleasure because I don't think I enjoyed it enough. But like I said, it's not bad. There's nothing in this movie that I hate. The Afghan sequence just, to me, takes a long time, and I just feel like we're in this really slow, just grinds to a halt, the plot. Anyway, that's it for my Living Daylights review. The next movie I'll be watching is No Time to Die, which will be the first time that I'll see it in basically a year and a half since I saw it in theaters. What was that? October of 2021. So we're now in June. So yeah, a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. But I'm excited because this is one that when I first saw No Time to Die, I liked, but I wasn't sure how much I like it. So we'll see. But anyway, that's it for now. Have a good one, guys. Oh, I have this other thing up. Sorry.